G'day folks, welcome to the Art of Teaching podcast. Here we talk about how to become more compelling communicators in the way of Jesus. My name is John Tyson, a pastor here in New York City, and I'm joined by John Mark Comer, founder of Practicing the Way, and Jefferson Bethke, author of Take Back Your Family and To Hell with the Hustle. Welcome to Season 2.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Art of Teaching podcast. I have loved this discussion so far. I've learned a ton just being at this table, and I'm sure you have as well tuning in, whether you're watching, listening, wherever you're at. Okay, so the topic we have for today's episode is a great word, disenchantment, and how secularism disenchants us. First of all, what do you mean by that, and how does that kind of affect us? And let's just get going on that one.
I think disenchantment sort of has the idea of living in a world where there's no magic possible.
That's a good word.
There is no sense of...
It's not an enchanted world of God and providence and goodness.
Yeah, it's the raw, natural stuff that we have. It is a materialistic world. This is it. This is all there is. There's nothing beyond it. No transcendent, no spiritual force, no other realm, no God, no life.
Enchantment has like a built-in joy about it, though, that I think is a different layer than just the clinical diagnosis. And so then disenchantment is more of like the sapping of like this. Magic is a fun word for what we're talking about.
And joy is replaced by hedonism.
I think about a decade ago, there was a movement. I remember this coming to New York because some of the big debates were there about the new atheists. And the new atheists viewed a disenchanted world as freedom from divine tyranny. So for them, I remember this phrase Christopher Hitchens used, which is getting out of a celestial North Korea where there was this like divine...
Such a Christopher Hitchens line.
He was fairly poetic.
Divine dictator looking at us, controlling our thoughts and every emotion and expression we had in life. So there's some people who view a disenchanted world as freedom from the tyranny of the old gods and religion. But other people who have sat deeply with the implications of this, someone like Camus, he believed that if there's no God, there is no heavenly Father. We're actually like horrifically sad. We're orphans. We are universal orphans. And we're on this planet with no purpose, no meaning. So this disenchanted world that we live in has elements of both freedom and profound sadness. It has some people for whom this is the joy they've always wanted, and for others there's just this profound sense of despair and meaninglessness. And I think that's why there's such a level of anxiety, because for the typical person, they feel torn between these views, trying to figure out what should my response be to the sovereignty of self. And ultimately, that's what happens in a world where there is no God. Something has to fill that gap. And in secularism, in a disenchanted world, it is exclusive, self-sufficient humanism. This is what Charles Taylor says about it. I mean by this a humanism accepting no final goals beyond human flourishing, nor any allegiance to anything else beyond this flourishing. Of no previous society was that true. So in the modern world, the UN Charter of Human Rights has replaced the scriptures as the source of all divine truth, and probably the thing our world has as the standard to which it's organizing itself through. I remember Keller talking about why people don't want religion in a disenchanted world and why faith is problematic. Here's what he says. You need a disenchanted world rather than an enchanted world. You cannot build a society on faith because faith offends obvious reason. It creates oppression through moralistic power structures that exclude many good people. It hinders mutual benefit at a public and policy level with exclusive claims, and it represses natural sensual satisfaction and expression with harmful and antiquated ideas. And so that's why people say we do not need faith in a disenchanted age, because it functions as a kind of oppression. It comes from another age that is no longer plausible in the world that we live in. Taylor's probably most famous idea is one he calls the age of authenticity. And the age of authenticity, this is the quote, I mean the understanding of life which emerges with the romantic expressivism of the late 18th century, that each one of us has his or her, and that's dated, it should be an endless number of gender options, own way of realizing our humanity. and that it's important to find and live out one's own as against surrendering to conformity with a model imposed on us from outside by society, the previous generation, or religious or political authority. Now, when you hear that, you're like, that sounds kind of dramatic, but James, how would you sort of simplify that? In terms of finding freedom from as opposed to freedom.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is human beings can't live without meaning, can't live without purpose, can't live without authority. So that authority that used to be vested in God, in Scripture, has to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it goes to the self. And so you become your new authority. And any form, this is the major problem we face, preaching in particular in secular context and progressive context, is any form of external authority is construed as oppressive.
Yeah.
Whereas internal authority is understood to be liberation. When there's of course there's some truth in that, but often the opposite is true, which is why you have this polarity. I think you named something really interesting. There's these kind of two reactions that exist simultaneously to the immanent frame, to the rejection of God, to the new authority being the self, and new morality being aesthetic opinion. You know, that's Carl Trueman's whole thing. Most people do ethics now the same way we do like fashion or home design based on just internal. He calls it aesthetic emotion.
Jeez.
Meaning we decide about sexuality the same way we decide if I like your shirt or not, or if I want to decorate my house modern or country or like mid-century. Or like, it's just preference. It's just kind of, this kind of feels good to me. I like how it looks. That's how we are now doing ethics in the secular world because there's no transcendent authority. So I think what you named right is there's this polarizing. For some people, this is experienced, at least for a season in their journey, as a kind of liberation. It's almost like a Mardi Gras, like a, Carnival, let's just go do whatever I want. But there is this dark underbelly of ennui. I think a lot of the superficiality in culture is because if you live in this world, you can't go very deep into your soul because what you'll find is your internal world will not match the hedonism of your external world. So you have to kind of live at this surface level. You have to be on your phone. You have to be in TikTok. You have to be busy with work. You have to be busy with your sexuality. You have to be swiping right because you can't ever be alone with yourself because all of this stuff, including I think the God-ordained conscious in you, will come up. I mean, do you guys know Nietzsche's last words?
No.
I can't remember.
Okay, so Nietzsche, Truman points this out. And if you've not read The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self, what are you even doing with your life? Most significant Christian book
of
in
like
a while.
a decade,
Brilliant.
What's the abridged version that's the abridged version. There's even
Strange New World.
Strange New World. So
I had my kids all read that one.
Solid.
So one of the things that he points out, Truman points out, is that Nietzsche was really the first Western thinker to call Darwin's bluff. So Darwin, gives us this now scientific plausibility structure for a godless world. But Darwin didn't really follow through on it. A lot of people think that he recanted at the end of his life and came back to faith. There's all sorts of debate about that, but there's a strong movement of thought that says he basically recanted a lot of his ideas and came back to faith in God at the end of his life. But either way, he gives us this world, this kind of whole new possible worldview. But Nietzsche was really the first one to call the West on its bluff and say, hey, listen, if that's true, if there's no God, no creator, no design, no intention, we're just animals and it's just survival of the fittest, then ... So, for example, the Third Reich bases their entire ideology on Nietzsche's ideology.
Yeah.
So Nietzsche, godless, anti-God kind of nihilistic worldview, would write essays about his death and how he would proclaim to the world, his last words would be, and now I dissolve into the nothingness, or something like that, right?
So hopeful.
So he was like bragging about his last words, now I am nothing.
Yeah.
But he loses his mind. So the last 10 years of his life, he's a shut-in in his sister's home. He's gone mad. He's writing letters to his former friends, signing them Dionysus or Jesus Christ.
No.
Like the name of a Greek demon god or Christ. He's lost his mind. He's shut in his house. He's basically mute and cannot speak. And his last dying words are, "Mother, I am dumb."
Wow.
And he dies.
Wow. It's like it almost like ate away his brain, the ideology.
Mother, I am dumb.
Yeah.
So I think this is the person who said God is dead.
Yeah.
So I think there's a tragic kind of symbolic moment there of this dark underbelly underneath the hedonism. And you see this in any modern city. You have all these people, most of whom are significantly better off materially than most people have ever been in human history, Ubering their way to the next, happy hour or late night drink, sleeping their way through, they're not exhausted from parenting little kids. They're just doing what they like. It's not a part of the script, know? But then there's this dark underbelly of massive anxiety, addictions to substance abuse, sexual brokenness, attachment, like deep attachment brokenness, and this existential void that's like hovering underneath the modern soul that we constantly have to stay up from through distraction.
Man, and there is a part of there even with Nietzsche too, like it's almost like it corrodes you. There's a corrosion element to it, which corrosion's slow, it's over time, but it just begins to eat away. So what would you say, I had a couple different things I was thinking about as you guys were talking. I feel like one thing is, would you guys, and obviously Nietzsche's an extreme example, would you say there is a life cycle that you guys see in your pastoring of people through secularism, and maybe even a hopeful way?
There's a honeymoon period for sure.
Okay, and then what would you say the next one is? And is there maybe it's even a circle of like, do you ever see where are people most primed for the gospel on their journey of secularism? Does that maybe make sense?
We're going to get to that in the next episode, which is basically how do you turn the corner and work towards renewal.
Okay.
So we're going to do an episode that really touches on that.
So before we talk about renewal, let's just keep talking about dread. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was going to say, no, this is an important note to make because I actually think that there's people who are caught in between. Okay?
That's what I'm asking. The life cycle.
Well, no, this not even caught between.
It's a both and. They both exist at the same time.
Yes. Okay.
Happy to do whatever the heck I want without God, and existential dread.
And also another thing which I'm talking about, which is neither of these responses to the initial thing I put up, which is this.
But we're going to try to finish your sentences for you incorrectly.
Yes.
So Derek Rishmay, again, who's written on secularism very, very thoughtfully. Here's how most people are doing secularism. It's not with like super highs and low lows.
They're not ending with "Mother, I am dumb."
They're fine-tuning reality, ready?
Practice.
To get through life.
Yes.
And when your goal is to get through life, if all there is this life, and the goal is to get through it,
be happy.
Yes, this is what he says. Put another way, we all know sane, rational people living much the same as we do, yet believing radically different things. Your Sikh neighbors, your Buddhist gym buddy, or your atheist co-worker buy groceries at the same food shops, catch the Marvel franchise at superhero flicks, love their families. But none of them goes to your church on Sunday. There are no more singular, monolithic, obvious takes on the world. Belief has become less of an on-off switch and more of a series of dials you can set in various degrees.
That's good.
Post-secular humanist, romantic libertarian, eco-feminist, and on and on. And I'd say, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
This fine-tuning of reality.
It's cocktail spirituality.
Preferences, this sort of thinking is what secularism is to most people. You can tune up spirituality, you can tune down morality. You can tune up faith.
You can focus on the contemplative and dial down the sex ethic.
Yeah, you can do any component of it. And I want to say this is most people's experience of life under secularism. It's not total despair. It's not total liberation. It is, if all there is a 70 to 80 year run with a bit of longevity thrown in as another philosophy you can dial. Your goal is to get through life with as much meaning as you can derive, with as much pain as you can avoid, and people are constantly fine-tuning spiritualities, philosophies, preferences, and life hacks to get through. So ultimately, what secularism does is it flattens things out, gets rid of the divine, and leaves people with what we're about to talk about in our next episode, which I want to call the malaise of imminence.
Yeah.
What Taylor calls the malaise of imminence. The malaise of imminence is that sense, is this all there is? And that's why I think Alpha starts so well for so many people, because Alpha's opening question is there more to life than this? So in the next episode, which you're going to kick us to, we're going to talk about how to probe and push the malaise of imminence to open the door to renewal.
Yeah, can I just 30 seconds, 60 minutes, or 60 seconds, excuse me. Would you guys, that dialing concept is interesting. Would you feel like that's conscious or subconscious for most people you run into?
I think it's desperate. I think it's
so that would be aware. They're aware that they're doing
100%, man. This is so the algorithm's
I
doing
need this. I need
the
this.
algorithm's doing it to you, but you are constantly looking through the options of identity. You're constantly looking through the options of
say,
lifestyle,
let me give this a little 6-week
preferences,
experiment.
aesthetics, and you're just, man, you are trying to get a frequency with which you can get peace.
Yeah.
I think that is the whole life project, is fine-tuning to a sense of peace within the self.